So here's the deal. I've filmed with and taken photos with Canon cameras ever since I started getting into photography and videography when I was like 16. And overall, I loved it. I loved using my Canon cameras. I taught myself photography and videography with a Canon T3i when I first got started in high school. And then as my freelance videography career progressed, I eventually upgraded to a Canon 80D. And then I finished off my time with Canon with the 6D Mark II. All of these cameras were really great and they served me well through my freelance career and through taking photos for Instagram and making these YouTube videos. But obviously over the years on YouTube, I started seeing more and more creators switching to Sony cameras, which made me really curious. After watching a lot of review and first impression videos, I learned that the Sony cameras offered a lot of features that gave me the opportunity to level up my content, especially my videos. So eventually I decided to take the leap, and really there were three main reasons why I switched. So let's talk about them. The first thing that really convinced me when it comes to switching from Canon to Sony is the smaller form factor. So let me explain something really quick just in case you're unfamiliar. When I was shooting with Canon, I was using their DSLRs. DSLRs are cameras with mirrors in them. That's what they use to reflect the light onto the sensors and ultimately capture the image. By nature of how this works mechanically, the cameras need to be bigger in order to accommodate the mirrors that are inside it. Meanwhile, the Sony cameras are mirrorless. This basically means they're using an electronic system where the light goes to the sensor, and honestly, I'm not a scientist, but I know that these cameras are smaller and more compact and lighter as well. This really appeals to me because I love to go out and shoot content like on a whim, sometimes making vlogs even just for fun. And I always felt a little inhibited to do that by the Canon cameras because they were so heavy and obvious to carry around in public. They don't really fit into a purse very well, and they're just sort of, they're big, they're heavy, that's what they are. And so it really appealed to me, the idea of having a super high quality, amazing camera that can do everything that I want it to, plus I can fit it into my little backpack. This also means it's really a lot lighter for carrying around to vlog with, and also the lenses that go with mirrorless cameras tend to be smaller too. So if you're the kind of person that wants to have a smaller camera and a generally more minimalist and compact setups, you can carry it around and vlog, travel with it, and all that good stuff, then a mirrorless camera, and in my opinion, a Sony mirrorless camera is a really good option for that. Personally, I chose to get the Sony a6600, which if you're curious about that choice specifically, definitely let me know in the comments below because I can go into detail why I chose this camera over the other Sony bodies that are on the market right now. But ultimately, I decided to go with a crop sensor camera because it's a little bit more affordable, and I just didn't feel the need to go full out with the a7 III or one of the other full frame cameras just because the lenses tend to be a lot more expensive as well. Anyway, before we get too much more on a tangent about gear, let's go into the second reason why I switched to Sony. Reason number 2, there are just better video settings in these Sony cameras. As somebody who spends a lot of time making videos for YouTube and for my freelance clients, I really appreciate that the Sony cameras have more options when it comes to 4K video and higher frame rates. Even on my Canon 6D Mark II, which was a pretty good full frame Canon camera, the best I could do was 1080p at 60 frames a second. So yeah, definitely there are slow-mo options there, that's fine, but the Sony camera that I have now allows me to shoot at 1080p, 120 frames per second, which is double that frame rate, which allows for even cooler slow-mo action. Plus, the 6D Mark II didn't have 4K either, which didn't seem to be that big of a deal to me before, but now that I started shooting on 4K, I'm loving that I'm able to pop into a closer frame and still maintain the quality, which is fun for editing YouTube videos and gives you a little bit of flexibility when you're shooting something and then you realize later you wish you would have had a bit of a tighter shot. Then you can just crop it in post and you're still gonna have enough quality to export at 1080p. In order to get that super high frame rate and 4K in Canon cameras, I'm pretty sure you would have to go and buy the 1DX or one of these really high-end sort of cinema cameras that Canon offers. They really don't have a sort of entry-level or consumer camera that has those options. Meanwhile, I was able to buy a Sony crop sensor mirrorless that is definitely a consumer level camera, and it has 4K and 1080p 120 frames a second. So to me, that's amazing. That is definitely part of the reason why I decided to switch to Sony. The third reason, which is probably the most intangible one, but also super important, is that by switching over to this new Sony setup, I was able to have a more minimalist gear collection, which maybe doesn't necessarily sound like a benefit, but to me, I feel like it means that I'm actually utilizing all of the gear that I have and not feeling guilty about the lenses that I've left sitting on the shelf for months at a time. Honestly, it was kind of hard to make this decision, and I've been thinking about switching over to the Sony system for probably like 2 or 3 years now, and I was so hesitant to do it because I was scared that I had made this huge investment into all of my Canon gear, and I knew that by selling it used, I was never going to get the same amount of money that I originally put into it. And it was such a big part of my business because over the years, as I've grown this freelance videography business that eventually morphed into this social media marketing agency, all of the money that I earned from my freelance video work back in the day, I reinvested into getting more gear and better gear so that I could make better videos for my clients. And I still definitely make video content for clients now, but my work has shifted into more of my own content creation, which I'm so excited about. So it made sense for me to change my gear setup to be more well suited for the content creation I'm doing for my own platforms rather than collecting gear that I was using for other people's content. But it was tough, and I was really intimidated when I first listed all of my different stuff on Facebook Marketplace. But I actually ended up being able to sell 2 camera bodies and 5 lenses all within about a week. And I almost earned enough from that to be able to completely cover my new 1 camera body and 2 lenses, but I did end up having to pay a little bit on top in order to make the upgrade, which is totally fine. That's what you would normally expect if you're gonna switch from camera gear that's already been used to brand new stuff. But so far, I've been absolutely loving using my new Sony a6600. And if you're curious, I shoot all of my YouTube videos on my Sony lens. It's the 18-105 f4. To me, this is the perfect, beautiful, all-purpose lens. And in addition to this one, I have the Sigma 30mm f1.4. And that allows me to do really great portraits and more cinematic shots. And between the two of them, I pretty much have every focal length that I would possibly need covered. And to me, f4 is more than enough to get a little bit of bokeh in my typical video or photos that I'm taking. I'm really curious, what camera do you use to shoot your Instagram photos and film your YouTube videos if you make them? Let me know in the comments below. If you're still not sure between Canon and Sony, then you should check out this video I made about how to shoot really great photos on the Canon 80D, if that's the camera you're using, or really any entry-level DSLR. Then I know this video is going to be super helpful for you. But before you head on over there, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future videos. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next one. Okay, bye!